The transfer portal has essentially turned college football into free agency. A lot of people like it, and a lot of people hate it. And if I were to guess, the people who really enjoy the transfer portal are likely going to be fans of the teams that we talk about in today's video. We're going to be taking a look back at the best defensive players who transferred last offseason. These are players who thrived at their new schools and performed better than expectations. Before we get to today's video, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are you're a college football fan, and odds are you likely aren't subscribed to my channel. So make sure to join the best college football community here on YouTube. Also, if you could drop a like on this video, I would greatly appreciate it as well. It helps the algorithm of the video and helps share it with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is going to be the top 10 players on defense that transferred last offseason. If you'd like to see my top 10 offensive players video, you guys can go check that out as I posted it last week. Deciding who the best defensive player that transferred in 2021 was pretty easy. Florida State defensive end Jermaine Johnson had an incredible season and was named the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. After 2 seasons with Georgia, Johnson transferred to Florida State. He had a career year and was one of the best defensive players in the entire country. In 12 games, he led the ACC with 18 tackles for loss and 12 sacks. His tackles for loss and sack totals were the most by a Florida State defender since 2016. Entering conference championship weekend, Johnson led all Power 5 defensive linemen in tackles and was ranked in the top 6 in sacks and tackles for loss. He was a 4-time ACC Defensive Lineman of the Week, the most honors in 2021 for any defensive player in the entire country. He had some pretty incredible games, but his best game of the season came against Miami. He had 5 tackles for loss with 3 sacks and a forced fumble. Following his breakout campaign, Jermaine Johnson announced he'd be declaring for the NFL Draft. After 2 pretty solid seasons at Tennessee, Henry To'oTo'o transferred to Alabama. Having to play alongside Will Anderson might have made him not as memorable, but he still had a fantastic season with the Tide. The coaches named him to the All-SEC second team. He led Alabama with 113 tackles. He also had 8.5 tackles for loss to go along with 4 sacks, 2 quarterback hurries, 2 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. He was named the Walter Camp Defensive Player of the Week after his dominant performance against Mississippi State and Arkansas. Against the Bulldogs, he racked up 13 tackles with a sack. Against the Razorbacks, he had 13 tackles with 3 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. After having the best season of his collegiate career, To'oTo'o announced that he'd be returning to Alabama for his senior season in 2022, giving Alabama the best linebacker group in the country, as he'll be back alongside with Will Anderson. After spending 3 seasons with Maryland, linebacker Chance Campbell transferred to Ole Miss. After appearing in 20 games for the Terps over 3 seasons, Campbell had even better production in only 13 games for the Rebels last year. He finished the 2021 campaign with 109 tackles, the 4th most in the SEC. He also had 12.5 tackles for loss with 6 sacks. He also added 11 quarterback hurries, 2 pass breakups, 3 fumble recoveries, and 2 forced fumbles. He became a staple of the Rebels defense, who as a unit completely improved their defense in 2021. It was Ole Miss's best defensive season since 2015, and Chase Campbell was a large reason for that. After his career year, he announced that he'd be foregoing his remaining year of eligibility and entering the NFL Draft. Up next on our list is Georgia cornerback Darion Kendrick. After spending 3 seasons with Clemson, he was dismissed by Dabo Swinney last offseason. He ended up transferring to Georgia, where he helped the Bulldogs win a national championship. It was a massive pickup for Georgia, as Kendrick was seen as one of the best cornerbacks in all of college football. He was as good as advertised for Georgia, as he was named to the All-SEC second team. He started all 15 games in 2021, finishing with 41 tackles, 4 interceptions, 3 quarterback pressures, and 3 pass breakups. He was named the defensive MVP of Georgia's playoff semifinal victory over Michigan, as he racked up 5 tackles and 2 interceptions. After a fantastic season, Kendrick announced his plans to enter the 2022 NFL Draft. After a really good 2020 season for Temple, defensive end Arnold DeBecade transferred to Penn State. He was an All-Big Ten first-team selection by the coaches and media and was voted an AP All-Big Ten second-team selection. In 12 games this season, he finished with career highs across the board. He had 62 tackles, including 18 tackles for loss to go along with 9.5 sacks. He also added 7 quarterback hurries, a pass breakup, 2 forced fumbles, and even blocked 2 kicks. DeBecade had at least 1 tackle for loss in 8 straight games, one of the longest streaks in all of college football this season. After shooting up draft boards, he made the decision to declare for the NFL draft, where he's emerged as one of the best defensive end prospects available. Up next, we have Big Cat Bryant, who easily has the best name on this list. After spending 4 seasons with Auburn, he transferred to UCF last season, following his former head coach, Gus Malzahn. In his 4 seasons with the Tigers, he racked up 56 tackles with 11.5 tackles for loss and 11 sacks. In his lone season with the Knights, he nearly replicated those numbers. The defensive end led UCF and was second in the American Conference with 14 tackles for loss. He finished with 50 tackles that included 8 quarterback hurries, 6 sacks, and 3 pass breakups. He was named to the American Conference's first team by the coaches. In addition to that, he was named the American Conference Defensive Lineman of the Year, as well as the American Conference Newcomer of the Year. After a lengthy college career, Big Cat Bryant entered the 2022 NFL Draft. After spending 2 seasons at LSU, Siaki Aika reunited with his former coach, Dave Aranda, at Baylor in 2021. He had the best season of his career as he finished with 24 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, and a pass breakup. The defensive tackle was one of the most disruptive players on a Baylor defense that was one of the best in the entire country. He was named first team All Big 12 following the season. In addition, he was also named the Big 12's Defensive Newcomer of the Year. For those who watched Baylor games, you know that he was disrupting nearly every play on defense. His best game of the season came during the biggest game of the year for Baylor. Against Oklahoma State in the Big 12 title game, Aika had a career-high 2.5 tackles for loss and had half a sack. In a game dominated by the Baylor defense, he was arguably the best player on the field. Durden transferred to NC State after 3 seasons with Florida State. He had a pretty solid career while with the Seminoles, as he totaled 68 tackles with 13 tackles for loss and 7.5 sacks. In 11 games with NC State, he turned into one of the best players on defense for the Wolfpack. The nose tackle was named to the ACC All-First Team after his solid season. He had 31 tackles, including 7 quarterback hurries, 4.5 tackles for loss, and 3.5 sacks. He did all this while starting the final 8 games of the season. After a successful 2021 campaign, Durden announced that he'd be staying at NC State for 1 more season. We have yet another Florida State player cracking this list, as safety Jamie Robinson was fantastic for the Seminoles last year. After 2 productive seasons with South Carolina, he transferred to Florida State. In his 2 seasons with the Gamecocks, he totaled 135 tackles with 2 interceptions and 8 pass breakups. Well, in his first season with Florida State, Robinson was named to the All-ACC first team and also earned the most All-ACC votes for any safety in the entire conference. He led Florida State with 84 tackles and led the ACC with 4 interceptions, while his 7 tackles for loss were 3rd on the team. He also forced 2 fumbles. Robinson wrapped up his first season in Tallahassee with a standout game against Florida. He finished with 18 tackles and an interception. He's the only player in the country this season and the first in the ACC since 2011 to reach those tackle numbers with an interception in a game. After turning into one of the best defensive players in the ACC, Robinson announced that he'd be returning to Florida State in 2022. Our last player on this list goes to Key Lawrence, who transferred to Oklahoma after only 3 games with Tennessee in 2020. This past season, Lawrence turned into one of the best players on the Sooners defense. He had 47 tackles with 3.5 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups, and 3 forced fumbles. Against Iowa State, Lawrence was named the Transfer of the Week. He finished with 7 tackles, including a sack, to go along with 2 forced fumbles, one of which resulted in a touchdown. So, which player on this list impressed you the most in 2021? Were there any other players that transferred that had solid seasons but didn't make the list? Drop a comment down below and let me know who you thought had the best season. If you haven't done so yet, now's the perfect time to smash that subscribe button before you go. If you love college football, then this is definitely the place for you. Oh, and don't forget to smash that like button as well, as it really helps the algorithm of the video and does help share the video with more college football fans. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.